All right, well, I'm ready to wrap this chapter up. How about you? Let's get this done. And the last part of it is all about reflexes, particularly the reflexes that are handled through the spinal cord. And so these are automated responses, very stereotyped to specific stimuli. They occur through a sensory neuron pathway, then an interneuron that directly connects the sensory neuron to the output motor neuron. So this is our simple reflex that we'll be looking at more specifically. There are four important properties of the reflex you should know for the exam. Of course, you have to have some type of stimulus to kick off the reflex. The reflexes need to be very rapid because they're helping you avoid danger or harm to your body. They are termed what is called involuntary, and they are always stereotyped. So these are not complex responses in any means. They are very predictable every single time. So first we'll have the arrival and the activation of the receptor, the activation of the sensory neuron, processing by some postsynaptic cell, activation of a motor neuron, and response of a peripheral effector. So let's look at this in terms of those 5 steps. You have a sensory receptor getting stimulated by the tack in the skin. It's detecting that sensation. Here's your unipolar neuron in the dorsal root ganglion. So you're conveying that information. It's going to the posterior gray horn where the sensory neuron ends. So the sensory neuron has conducted the impulse from the point of the sensory receptor now to the dorsal gray horn or posterior gray horn, where there is an interneuron that directly links this sensory neuron to an output motor neuron. And so that's called the integrating center. And then the motor neuron is going to convey it out to a effector, and then the effector will respond. Those are your basic 5 steps of any general reflex. There are also reflexes called stretch reflexes, and these involve the muscle spindles. And we'll look at a picture of these. There are small fibers embedded inside your muscles that will monitor the stretch of the muscle. Now, there are both sensory components and motor components that will help adjust the tension of the muscle in accordance with these stretch reflexes. Okay? The extrafusal muscle fibers are your actual contractile muscle fibers. Don't get confused by that terminology. So these are just merely your muscle fibers that are contracting. These are special sensory structures that are monitoring the stretch and contraction of the muscle. So this helps maintain the tone of the muscle. We can see these specialized structures embedded within your muscle cells. You recognize the sarcomeres and so forth in these muscle cells. And then these are found embedded within those, so we can easily check out how contracted or stretched is my muscle, and then apply a stimulus if needed to correct that. The stretch reflexes we see here, we have the normal patella reflex, right? We're going to strike with the hammer. Then what you're going to have is this will stimulate these muscles within here, these fibers within your muscle. You're striking that tendon, which is going to yank on this tendon, which is going to cause a sensory output being conveyed along this interneuron. These are going to strike muscles that will act in an antagonistic fashion. One will contract, one will relax, and you will kick your leg up in response. This is the typical stretch reflex involving the same 5 steps we've seen already with general reflexes. All right, and so this is just another way to look at it. Perhaps this is more appealing to you than the previous show that we just had. But I encourage you to look at this a little more deeply on the face-to-face PowerPoints. Now, spinal reflexes, we have withdrawal reflexes where you need to move a body part away very rapidly. And we looked at that with the tack in the skin. Perhaps you have a burn. I'll never forget taking my youngest boy a few years back, several years back, to Sizzlers. I don't know if you remember, don't see too many Sizzlers these days, but it's a steakhouse where you go up and you pick up all your food, kind of like a buffet arrangement. And around the steak, I was looking at it and I was bending forward to look at it back when I was a meat eater. And I had my young son in my arms and I was bending forward and I saw just at the last second, I saw his toe touch the hot pan of the steak. And he just went like that and then all of a sudden just started screaming. And so his withdrawal reflexes weren't real well suited, and it probably didn't help I was holding them in that position. The flexor reflex is what I'm kind of talking about, that you need to move something away very rapidly. And any reflex is going to depend on the intensity of the sensation and where it's occurring at. So here we have a very painful stimulus. You need an incredibly rapid response. You're going to have an interneuron that connects it to the motor output. It's going to stimulate the flexors in your biceps, allow your triceps to relax, and you'll move your hand away very quickly. Notice there still is a projection to the brain. That's where you're going to start crying at as you burnt your hand. It'll go to the brain will realize what the heck's going on, and you'll start crying, and you'll do something. You'll put your hand in ice or put some aloe on it or something. But the immediate reaction is not mediated via the brain. All right, so spinal cord trauma happens to thousands of people every year, typically by motorcycle accidents, and resulting in vertebral fractures. Shouldn't surprise you. Us stupid guys in our 16 to 30-year-old range. I'm not in that age range, but I was a stupid young guy at one time. Just take chances more than we should. And like I said, mostly due to motorcycle accidents, you can get complete transection of the spinal cord and complete severance of the cord. And so whatever happens below the cord, whatever activities are conducted below that, are just not going to occur anymore. If you're above C4, you have damage in C1, C2, C3, then it's quite possible you will not be able to breathe, and you would always have to be on some type of respiratory aid. This can also result in what's called spinal shock, which leads to paralysis. If you get a condition where both lower limbs are paralyzed, then that's called paraplegia. You have quadriplegia when all the limbs are being paralyzed, and then hemiplegia when only half of your body shows paralysis. And then finally, paresis is just partial paralysis of a limb or a region of the body, or just merely weakness of the limbs.